Aloha Kako, welcome to the joint hearing for the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems and the Committee on Water and Land. Today is March 20th and the time is 9:31 a.m. and we are convening in room 325. Today we have with us Vice Chair Kahaloa, Rep. Cochran, and for Water and Land, if you want to.
For Waterland, myself as chair, Vice Chair Poi Poi, Rep. Chan, Rep. Hashim, Rep. Morikawa.
All right. Before we get started, I'm going to go over some brief housekeeping rules. There's a 2-minute time limit per testifier in order to allow as many testifiers to testify as possible. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Lastly, please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin. With that being said, we'll move on to our first measure, SB 2159 SD2, relating to food sustainability. Our first testifier is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Morning, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committees. Early Yamamoto, Department of Agriculture. The department proposes amendments to SD2 by basically we're trying to delay the update to the agriculture functional plan that was completed in 1991, and instead focus on the aquaculture and seafood aspects of gathering information, and the pathway is quite well described in SD2, and we're just bringing that as the focus, and not trying to put off the update to the agriculture functional plan, which is a much more complex, intensive affair. The one done in 1991, and I was around, took 10 years before it was accepted by the advisory committee, then eventually signed by the governor back then. I'll be here for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier we have is Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Kaylee Enixon from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. We will be standing on our written testimony in support with amendments. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Office of Planning and Sustainable Development.
Aloha, good morning, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Danielle Bass, State Sustainability Coordinator of the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. We stand on our testimony in support. However, we've noticed that in the most recent Senate committee added new language that focuses on another portion of the Hawaii State Planning Act, specifically the objectives and policies of the economy for agriculture. That section is Hawaii Revised Statutes 226-7. Given that language is now available in this bill, we suggest an amendment to remove and delete Section 1 of 226-7, the viability of Hawaii's sugar and pineapple industries, given that these are no longer major economic agricultural industries toward achieving Hawaii's food sustainability. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm available for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union. Noting that was the last person or entity wishing to testify in person or via Zoom, is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2159? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? Go ahead.
For Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. Thank you for being here this morning. I just wanted to clarify your testimony. I can't find in the bill the section that you want to amend.
Yes, okay, so this would be a portion, if you take a look in the bill, there's a portion that adds new language to 226, and I believe it's titled, sorry, I'm going from memory, Other Objectives of the Economy in Agriculture. That would be adjacent to what's currently in Part 1 of the Hawaii State Planning Act, which is the reference I made, 226-7, the current objectives of the economy for agriculture. In that current statute, there is a paragraph 1, and it discusses the viability of the pineapple and sugar industries. Given that this amendment from the Senate is hoping to add objectives for the agricultural economy, should the legislature continue with that amendment, we're recommending that we also amend and update the agricultural objectives since the sugar and pineapple industries are no longer viable.
I just want to clarify, though, 226-7 is not currently in the bill.
Yes, it is not currently in the bill. However, that amendment the Senate made would add on a new section near and adjacent to 226-7, saying other objectives to the economy for agriculture.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing something.
No, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to move on to our next measure, SB 2560, SD2, relating to invasive species. First testifier we have is Department of Agriculture. Okay. Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species. Okay. Support, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony providing comments.
Thank you. CGAPS is on Zoom. Okay, go ahead, CGAPS.
Hey, good morning, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. My name is Stephanie Easley with the Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species, and we are here in support of SB 2560 as a common sense measure to allow the Department of Agriculture to start working with people who lease state agricultural lands to start to address invasive pests and species on those lands. As we noted in our written testimony, this bill does not require HDOA to do anything. These are permissive authorities that HDOA could use with respect to leased lands if it determined it was appropriate. With respect to HDOA's comments that including restricted or prohibited species in the definition would prevent lessees from maintaining plants such as orchid, sugarcane, or pineapple, maybe there's some confusion. Chapter 150A of the Hawaii Revised Statutes requires HDOA to develop a list of restricted plants. HDOA does not have a list of restricted plants at this time. They have some administrative rules for plants that require quarantine to protect crops like sugarcane and passion fruit. So we think that, if they wanted to develop a list of restricted plants, that prohibiting those plants from being grown on agricultural leases would make sense. But we would also support changing the restricted or prohibited species to including noxious weeds. Sorry if that's not clear. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Galassi. I'm here on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. We submitted testimony offering comments on this measure, and while addressing invasive species is a high priority for cattlemen, we respectfully make some suggested amendments that we believe will create a more collaborative approach that reaches that goal of keeping up with invasive species while not unfairly putting that full burden on the leaseholder. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee. Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. We sounded our written testimony in support of this measure's intent, but would also echo the sentiments of the Cattlemen's Council, and that we have some concerns around the undue burden that's placed solely on the leaseholder, but yet places nothing on the part of, say, the department who is offering up that lease, and seeing as this could potentially be a mechanism to revoke leases should there be invasive species present on an agricultural parcel. We would seek to have maybe some softer language or at least a little more clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Jessica. Yeah, sure.
So aloha kako, aloha chair, vice chair, representatives. My name is Jess Sobochinsky, and I'm a first grade teacher over at Honaka'a Elementary on Hawaii Island. And I'm here to speak in support of Bill SB 2560. So teaching my students about our native species as well as other culturally significant agricultural plants is a major part of my social studies and science curriculum, as well as one of the ways that I align with the Nahopena'a'o standards and framework. I'm here to tell you that my students love learning about these flora and fauna that make Hawaii special. And it breaks my heart when I have to tell them that many of these species are endangered due to competition and predation from invasive species. I support SB 2560 as a step to mitigate and prevent the introduction and spread of these pests who are devastating the plants and animals that we rely on for food, cultural practices, and a strengthened sense of Hawaii. Mahalo for your consideration.
Mahalo for your testimony. Noting that was the last individual or entity wishing to testify via Zoom or in person on SB 2560. Is there anyone else who wishing to testify? Okay, members, any questions? Seeing none, we're gonna move on to our next measure. SB 2960 SD1 relating to farmers. And our first testifier is Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Okay. All right. Next testifier we have is Department of the Attorney General.
Good morning, chairs, vice chairs, members of the committee, Kelsey Nagata, Deputy Attorney General, providing comments on SB 2960 SD1. The wording in the bill presently regarding Section 17168A, subsection A, subsection 2, subsection I, on page L, page 8, lines 49 is ambiguous and unclear as to whether the legislature intends to add agricultural cooperatives as well as partnerships, corporations, and associations as they're all separate entities. We have provided two options for the legislature to determine which they would prefer, and which is in line with their intent. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony supporting the intent.
Thank you. Next testifier we have is Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
The Hawaii Cattlemen's Council stands on its testimony. Mahalo.
Thank you. Noting that was the last individual or entity wishing to testify in person or via Zoom on SB 2960 SD1. Anyone else wishing to testify? Go ahead. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chairs. Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. I apologize we did not submit written testimony, but we are in support of the measure as it aims to preserve the productive use of our agricultural lands. And if the provisions offered up by the Attorney General were to be adopted, would seek the association language as opposed to the language that also includes corporations, partnerships, et cetera. Particularly as there conceivably could be an expansion of corporate personhood, and have seen in a nationwide study of late that our right to farm laws across the country generally have benefited those corporate personhoods in community contentions around contained animal feeding operations. And so by further enshrining corporations as bona fide farmers, we are concerned that there are down the line effects that could negatively impact communities' ability to protect their environmental health. Other than that, of course, we're in great support of conserving agricultural use on agricultural lands, but would also seek, ideally, for there to be a provision that the income standards not have to be met should a disruption to their productivity be able to be demonstrated, namely a disaster. Thank you. I'll submit some written testimony as well.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2960? Okay, see none. Members, any questions? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to do a quick recess for decision-making. Recess. Okay, reconvening our 9:30 a.m. agenda for the committees on agriculture and food systems and water and land. First measure we'll be voting on is SB 2159, SD2 relating to food sustainability. Chair's recommendation is that we move this out as an HD1. We're going to be adopting amendments offered by OHA. In their testimony, we will also be adopting amendments offered by DOA. In their testimony, specifically page 2, lines 17 to 20, and page 4, lines 3 to 7. And we're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000.
Can we just clarify the OHA amendment? We're not taking the CBSFA. We're taking that the Department of Agriculture needs to consult with Native Hawaiian organizations, the new paragraph 6.
Yep, section
So
6.
not the CBSFA.
Yep, correct, yes. Thank you for that clarification. Any comments, questions, concerns, members? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Voting on SB 2159 SD2, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Both Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Cochran.
Aye.
Representative Lowen, excused. Representative Peruso. Aye. Representative Woodson. Aye. Representative Ward, excused. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
Waterline Committee, same recommendation. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, Vice Chair with amendments.
Voting on SB 2159 SD2 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Chen.
Aye.
Representative Ganadin. Excused. Representative Hashem.
Aye.
Representative Mizuno. Aye. Representative Morikawa. Aye. Representative Takayama.
Aye.
Representative Souza. Excused. Recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Moving on to our next measure, SB 2560, SD2 relating to invasive species. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to be adopting amendments offered by DOA in their testimony, which changes the language invasive pests to just pests, pursuant to existing definition in HRS 158-2. We're going to be adopting the amendments offered by Cattlemen's Council. We're going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and then defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns?
Sure.
Rep. Cochran.
I just want to state that I'll be a WR on this in reference to the eradication of invasive on respective lands can be very burdensome for people, as in, I believe Hunter Haviland had commented via Hawaii Farmers Union. So that's my reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2560 SD2, Chair's recommendation to pass with amendments, noting the excused absence of Representative Lowen and Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Representative Cochran, Representative Peruso. Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
Waterline Committee, same recommendations. Any questions, comments? Vice Chair, House Draft 1.
Voting on SB 2560 SD2 with amendments, noting Reps Ganadin and Souza as excused. Are there any noes or reservations? Hearing none, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Moving on to our last measure, SB 2960 SD1 relating to farmers. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. We're going to be adopting amendments offered by the AG's office in their testimony relating to associations and not partnerships. So the first section, page 8, line 9. We're going to also add an exemption for disasters based on HFU's testimony. And then we're going to make some technical amendments for clarity, consistency, and style, and then defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Any comments, questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 2960 SD1, Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, again noting the excused absence of Representative Lowen and Representative Ward. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Waterline Committee members, same recommendation. Any questions, comments? Vice Chair, House Draft 1.
Voting on SB 2960 SD1 with amendments, noting Rep. Souza and Ganadin as excused. Are there any noes or reservations? Hearing none, recommendation is adopted.
Thank you.
members.
Hearing adjourned.
Aloha kako. Welcome to the Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems. Today is March 20th, 10:16 a.m., the 10:15 a.m. agenda, and we're here convening in Conference Room 325. Today, we have Chair Gates, Representative Cochran, Representative Peruso, and myself as Vice Chair, Representative Kahaloa. Before we get started, I'm going to go over a couple of housekeeping rules. There's a 2-minute time limit per testifier to allow as many people to testify as possible. Please keep yourself muted and your video turned off if you're on Zoom while waiting for your turn to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If you disconnect while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note that the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifiers, and in the event of a catastrophic network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule the hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Lastly, please refrain from usage of profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to join. So first agenda item is SB 2362 SD1 relating to ornamental ginger. First to testify is Department of Agriculture. You're ready, Darcy.
Good morning, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on Senate Bill 2362 SD1. We appreciate the opportunity to testify, and we stand in support of this bill. We're going to support, obviously, our UH counterparts in addressing this important issue for our agricultural industries, and I'm available for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. University of Hawaii, Sitar.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, for the opportunity to testify on this particular bill, SB 2362 SD1. We, as CTAR, stand here to support this particular bill, and we are here to answer any questions. Please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have our written testimony in support. We do request that the committee reinsert the amount of $125,000. That is the requested amount to address this issue. And as stated, both Darcy and Dean Grierwald will be available for questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. There is no one else listed to testify in this measure. Is there anyone else wishing to testify? We had 11 testimonies in support. And with that, any questions, any comment, questions from committee? Sure. Yes, Representative Cochran.
Thanks. I'm not sure who this would go to. I totally support this, and but you know, I know that the species as ginger as a whole, such as the Himalayan gingers and things of nature, out in the nature itself in our watersheds is an issue. So so is this really just looking towards greenhouse nursery growing of this? And if we are, I mean, I wish it grew wild everywhere because I use it for ornamentals, but you know, how is it that we're not going to exacerbate something that can overrun our watersheds? I mean,
Maybe
again,
Department
I'm all
of
for it.
Agriculture, potentially.
So just if there's any type of oversight or looking at this, I know the Himalayan is taking over and all those other types of gingers, but
Unfortunately, the diseases that this bill is intended to help address only affects the ornamental gingers that are being commercially produced. Unfortunately, it does not. Himalayan ginger is not suffering from this complex of diseases that are affecting it. So this research really is to promote developing of resistant strains and varieties of the particularly the red ginger that is heavily impacted by this disease. This disease complex of viruses and and diseases.
Okay, well, no, thank you for your clarification.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity.
Committee, any other questions? See none, we'll move on to the next measure on the agenda, SB 3026, relating to pesticides. First to testify is Department of Agriculture.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Greg Takashima. I'm the Pesticides Program Manager. Thank you for allowing us to testify on this SB 3026. The department stands on its written testimony in strong support, and we are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to testify is University of Hawaii, Sitar.
And thank you for the opportunity, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We also stand in support of our written testimony for this particular bill, changing the members' basically composition on the committee. We are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to testify is Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
So sorry. Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Kaylee Nixon from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and we will be standing on our written testimony. Mahalo for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next to testify, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Hunter Hevelin here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. We'll stand on our written testimony in support, which is seeking an amendment. While we recognize the importance of updating of removing some industry representatives who are no longer active in our agricultural community, we'd like to see ourselves added as we now are very much active. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Seeing none, question from committee? Seeing none, we will now move on to the resolutions on the agenda. First resolution is HCR 162, HR 145. First to testify, 141. Thank you, Chair. First to testify is Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Doesn't say you have in-person testimony, so you, in support. And we have no others to testify on this resolution. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. My apologies, Vice Chair. We did submit on some of the resolutions, but they are all late, so on those we will identify ourselves. We're obviously in strong support of these two resolutions. We've had many hearings discussing agricultural crimes. I just wanted to come up here and to applaud the Department of Law Enforcement, who is taking an active role, and I do know that they are part of this resolution. I do also understand, I believe, the Department of Agriculture is already engaged with the Department of Law Enforcement, and we have been told by the Department of Law Enforcement that they are actually investigating the Palomera farm, that the recent theft at the Palomera farm, and also the water tank farm. And they are looking to do some pilot programs with some of the technology they have for agriculture, or for crimes on agricultural farms and ranches. So again, I think there's some momentum with the new Department of Law Enforcement, and we want to reduce the incidences of crime. And so any effort that we can put forward to addressing agricultural crimes, which I believe the last survey was, impact was $14.4 million to our farmers and ranchers statewide. So thank you for the opportunity. And if the committee did not receive our written testimony, we'll make sure the committee does have it. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarification, normally for resolutions, we read the entire intent of the resolution. So I will do that now, not in the correct order. So HCR 162, HR 141 is urging the Department of Agriculture to establish a 2-year agricultural crime pilot project to examine and assess the effectiveness of prosecuting agricultural crime cases, including those of agricultural theft and agricultural vandalism in the city and county of Honolulu and the county of Kauai. Noting that, anyone else wish to testify on this resolution? Questions from committee? Representative Cochran.
And I totally support this, but I just would like to see County of Maui included if there's a way to do that. I know it's a pilot and all that, but yeah, we have a lot of this going on too. And I mean, theft and vandalism occurs not just on agriculture, but I mean, if we're gonna hone in and, you know, target this type of crime, great. You know, that's one thing off the plate for our law enforcement and stuff. So just wanted to add that in to not forget us, little old Maui County. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Cochran. Noted. Any other questions from committee members? Noting none, we'll move on to the next resolution. That's HCR 23, HR 13, requesting the Board of Agriculture to conduct a study on the percentages of agricultural lands being leased by the state that are suitable for farming and actively being used for farming purposes and certain dollar amounts relating to lease transfers. First to testify is, there are nobody listed to testify on this. We have Department of Agriculture in opposition and 2 individuals in support. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Questions from committee members? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next resolution. HCR 24, HR 14, requesting the Department of Agriculture to create a plan to develop an invasive pest placard program and assess the resources needed to implement the program. First to testify is the LNR.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and also program support for our Hawaii Invasive Species Council. The department supports this measure. The creation of a placard licensing program was included as part of several measures this session, including those larger invasive species omnibus bills, SB 3237 and HB 2758. But one of the issues identified by testifiers of these measures was the costly expense of creating a licensing placard program that would be envisioned to look similar to what the restaurants do. And HDOA has testified that creating such a program would cost the department millions, and with the state budget so tight, it may not be the best time to create a whole new program under the department that also has other pressing needs and appropriations to support those. There are alternative solutions that would be low cost that could help make initial steps to address pests being moved around inter and intra-island by the nursery trade. This could be done by a nursery registration program. And so we really suggest that this resolution be a vehicle for those discussions and coming up with a solution that could be low cost, effective, and maybe initial steps to really address this high-risk pathway that these different measures and this resolution would address. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next to testify is Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species, CGAPS on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. My name is Stephanie Easley with the Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We are in support of HR 14, HCR 24. We support the intent of the resolution and believe a placarding program similar to the Department of Health's restaurant placarding program could be an important tool to prevent the spread of invasive pests. We note that the risk to consumers and the risk of spreading pests and other invasive species is different for different sectors, such as nursery plant sellers versus other agriculture producers. We hope HDOA will consider the risk profiles of different sectors in evaluating how and where a placard program could be implemented. Thank you again. Mahalo.
Thank you. We have testimony, written testimony from the Hawaii Department of Agriculture with comments and 1 individual testifying in support. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Questions from committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next resolution set. That is HCR 43, HR 32, requesting the Department of Agriculture to develop a strategic plan to strengthen food security for low-income communities in Hawaii. First to testify is Coordinating Group on Alien Pest Species, CGAPS, on Zoom.
Good morning. We did not submit testimony
Oh,
on
that's the
this
next
measure.
one. My apologies. We do not have any for this measure.
Oh, wait.
Would it, is it in the wrong? No, we're on 43 and 32. Oh. Is this in the wrong order? Oh, okay. We have Hawaii Department of Agriculture. It says in person.
Hi, morning. Earl Yamamoto, Department of Ag, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The department, I'm going to have to read this. The department appreciates the concern about uneven access to locally produced foods in low-income communities, but believes what is being asked of DOA is well beyond its experience and expertise. The department would be happy to contribute to, but not lead, an effort by other agencies and organizations that have experience managing and/or participating in the aggregation, distribution, and sale of locally produced food through traditional channels or the hybrid systems that have evolved during the food access crises of the COVID-19 pandemic. The department can contribute recently released statistics about agriculture producers down to the county level that may indicate opportunities and limitations of Hawaii's 6,569 agricultural operations. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. We had other individuals in support and organizations. We also have Hawaii Public Health Institute.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nate Hicks, Hawaii Public Health Institute, in support of this resolution. As we've discussed before in this committee, the need for healthy food amongst our low-income families is extremely high. Right, the DeBucks program is an example of that. We recognize the need and the unavailability for these folks. So we support this resolution and think we need to come up with a lot of creative ideas to help these populations. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Any questions from committee members? Oh,
Just that Hunter Hevelin on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union. We're in support of this resolution and see it as an important opportunity for the state agencies as well as community partners to figure out collectively how to grow our social safety net, and particularly to find mechanisms to connect our community of producers with our communities in need. So for that, we stand in strong support of this. Thank you.
thank you. Would anyone else like to testify on this measure? Committee members, any further questions? See none?
Chair, sorry.
Representative Cochran.
And I completely, wholeheartedly support this. You know, having survived the Lahaina fires, it's not just low-income communities that are affected with food security issues, as we know. So I think, you know, I'd like to see it broaden to not just low income, but places of, recovering from disasters and hardships too. So that's my comment.
We'll note that. Thank you, Representative Cochran. Any other questions or comments from committee? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next set of resolution measures. That is HCR 161, HR 140, requesting the Department of Agriculture to convene a working group to review the effectiveness of the relevant state laws governing agricultural-based commercial operations. First to testify is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
Okay, Earl Yamamoto, Department of Agriculture again. The department respectfully declines the request to convene a working group to review effectiveness of the relevant state laws governing agricultural-based commercial operations. The department has no regulatory authority within the agricultural district and has no input into the ordinances adopted by those counties who carry out Section 205-2, parent D, parent 15. It appears that the incidents of abuse described in the resolutions arise from the lack of a statutory requirement that the agricultural products, going to have to excuse, I made a long sentence. The agricultural products and the value-added products that are displayed, sold, prepared, and served, stored, processed, and distributed are grown exclusively or on some other amount of the lot or property where the agricultural-based commercial operations are proposed or is proposed. The abuses themselves do not appear to be contrary to the state law. The department comments that the proponents of the resolutions may wish to consult with the county planning departments to determine the characteristics of permitted agricultural-based commercial operations where there is no evidence that agricultural products grown in Hawaii are used and sold. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Keep the North Shore Country. On Zoom, are they here?
Aloha. Hi, my name is Gil Riviere, and I'm testifying in support of this resolution, and I'm a director of Keep the North Shore Country. We had this conversation a month and a half ago during a House bill, and there was great agreement in the room at the time that there is a problem with some of the abuses of this statute. People are selling stuff on land, and they're not actually growing anything on the land, and there's a disconnect. I have to testify, and I have to say I'm noting the Department of Agriculture's testimony. They say that the abuses themselves do not appear to be contrary to Section 205-2 D15. That is exactly the point. The statute doesn't work. The statute is too vague, and it needs to be refined. It needs to, we need to close the loopholes so that the counties then have some guidance to properly regulate this. In another paragraph, Department of Agriculture says they don't have regulatory authority, and it appears the incidents arise from a lack of requirement that agriculture be grown on the site. So those are the two exact reasons why this resolution is so important, that this conversation be had. And if not Department of Agriculture, then who? It seems to me that they are the right place for this discussion, and I really, really encourage this committee to keep this resolution moving. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Senator. We have several organizations who've provided support testimony, as well as many individuals. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. This is one of our late submissions that we did submit online. We are in support of the measure, or these two resolutions. We do agree there is some level of abuse. We want to make sure that we do allow these activities. And in reference to, I think, a previous testifier about products that are grown on those parcels, that was the original law. The legislature did amend the law to allow other products. We thought it was unfair if you were a farm that didn't have roadside access, you could sell it to a farmer or landowner that did have that roadside access. But again, the assurance needed to be that it was locally grown here in the state of Hawaii. So it may be time to relook at 205 and this section in specific to refine, as the previous testifier said. So again, we are supportive of commercial-based operations, but we do want guardrails. We want to make sure that it is providing the farmers and the ranchers additional revenue and access to customers, but supporting local agriculture and local agriculture production. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify on these set of resolutions? Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Thank you, Aloha. Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Hunter Hevelin, on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union, which I'm assuming we're listed in here, maybe a little bit erroneously, as Hawaii Farmers United. We are in support of this measure and would happily participate in a working group to address this protracted problem. I can say personally, it was about a decade ago when doing a project for our city and county's Department of Planning and Permitting when I reached out to Earl, who I believe wished me a good luck on trying to address this persistent problem, and here we are a decade later. So it is certainly something that continues to need to be worked on. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else wish to testify on this set of resolutions? Questions from committee? Seeing none, we're going to move on then to the next set of resolutions. HCR 189, HR 169, urging the state to prohibit the introduction of biocontrol agents that might threaten the economically important forage grass species. First to testify on this is Hawaii Department of Agriculture.
I'll actually remember to introduce myself, Darcy Oishi, Hawaii Department of Agriculture. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this resolution. The department does note that we do regulate the process, so any attempt that does have to go through Jonathan and plant quarantine to introduce, and any biocontrol agent, because chances are they're unlisted and therefore prohibited from entry. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we
available for questions.
Oh, thank you, Darcy. Next we have the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources and Program Support for our Hawaii Invasive Species Council. The department respectfully opposes this measure. I feel like this is the first time I'm saying those words this session. The process, as the last testifier mentioned, for identifying and testing and eventually releasing biocontrol agents, or what we call natural enemies, to address these widespread high-impact pests in Hawaii is one of the most stringent processes in the nation. It can take years and sometimes even decades to find and vet a biocontrol agent. Part of this process is doing host specificity testing, where plants that are native or potentially economically important are tested to assess the impacts of those agents on those types of species. Excuse me, it's really hard to write my testimony and read it for some reason today. As we are seeing more frequent and intense fires across the state, there is a need to address invasive grasses that are fueling these fires, and there's this renewed focus on addressing invasive grasses. I do want to mention that there's 2 grass species that we've been looking for funding to support biocontrol research on. This is fountain grass, which we see across especially the west side of Hawaii Island, and also guinea grass, which we see everywhere. Texas has already started the process of testing a gall wasp to control guinea grass. And this agent is incredibly promising because not only does it have the potential to reduce the biomass of guinea grass, which would therefore lower the fire risk, it can also simultaneously make guinea grass a more palatable foraging grass because it doesn't allow it to get to that stage where it becomes really woody and cattle and other ungulates won't feed on it. So biocontrol agents can be a win-win and in certain situations, and this measure, I feel, would unnecessarily restrict our tools to address high-impact fire-promoting grasses. And I do want to mention, we have 2 members here today that are part of our Hawaii Invasive Species Council. We did introduce and approve a resolution back in December that recognizes the role of invasive plants as it relates to wildfire in Hawaii and supporting recommendations for the prevention and post-recovery efforts to mitigate future impacts. And as part of that, be it resolved, there is this holistic approach to addressing invasive grasses and invasive plants that can really intensify and make wildfires more frequent. And part of that is considering biocontrol strategies for that landscape level control. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify, and I'm around for any questions.
Thank you. Cattlemen's Council on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. The Hawaii Cattlemen's Council strongly supports this measure. We are concerned about that potential for biocontrol targeting grasses, as it could have devastating impacts on these important forage grasses for Hawaii's ranchers, even if unintended. We're concerned about that host specificity, as it's not guaranteed that it won't affect things like kikuyu grass, which are important. Instead of biocontrol, we're asking that we take a look at making sure lands are managed rather than unmanaged. This resolution recognizes the benefits that come from these well-managed rangelands, and all these benefits, including the production of local beef, would not be readily available if the industry has to contend with a lack of forage to care for their cattle. We hope that the state considers Hawaii's ranchers as an asset when it comes to land management for wildfire suppression. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support.
Thank you. Next to testify is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Vice Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. We have several others in support, 15 total in support, 1 in opposition. No others on the list to testify in person. Would anyone else wish to testify on this set of resolutions? Questions from committee?
Chair.
Yes,
The
Representative
grazing,
Cochran.
thank you. I know this happened on your island because I tried to implement it in Maui County with sheep and other animal ungulates that eat grasses to control the overgrowth along highways and things. And so is there any maybe opportunity to utilize that type of, I mean, because it's the win-win as in fattening up our animals and, you know, and then controlling an invasive.
Well, can we call up Chelsea DLNR to maybe approach other alternatives?
Yeah, mahalo for the question. Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. As was mentioned by the Ranchers Association representative, it is a holistic approach. We can't just use one tool to address everything. I would say for using ungulates to do grazing and manage grasses, it can happen in some situations, but a lot of the grasses are not palatable. Fountain grass is not a high palatable grass for ungulates. So if there's other things in the area, they're going to choose to munch on that versus fountain grass. And that's why we see fountain grass across the landscape on the west side of Hawaii Island, despite there being tons of goats in that area. So I think there's definitely a role for using ungulates to manage invasive grasses and invasive weeds, but biocontrol is one of those tools that we really need to address those high-impact, widespread pests like invasive grasses that are beyond our normal means of tools that we have in our toolbox.
Okay, no, thank you for that.
One other question for DLNR. Are there other options that still help protect, you know, the forage grasses that we know our ranching industry needs to maybe, or basically the question, are there ways to amend the resolution to make it more palatable so we're protecting the industry and also acknowledging the needs for biocontrol?
Yeah, mahalo for the question. Chelsea Arnott again on behalf of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. I can definitely integrate some of the language that we utilized in our Hawaiian Invasive Species Council resolution because we did a long vetting process of putting that language together for the resolution because we knew that there was concern from ranchers about utilizing biocontrol agents and just kind of doing this one-size-fits-all approach to managing invasive grasses that can be important for ranch lands and that economy. So I can definitely look at some amendments that are suggestions for that resolution that could be included in maybe a compromise in language.
Thank you very much.
Mahalo.
Any other questions, committee? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the next set of resolutions. That is HCR 47, HR 36, requesting the Department of Land and Natural Resources to convene a working group to inform the public about the options available to address the state's feral chicken population. First to testify is Department of Land and Natural Resources. This is Catherine Stanaway. Thank you, Chelsea.
Chelsea Arnott on behalf of the Department of Natural Resources, Land and Natural Resources, excuse me. We'll stand on our written comments. They reflect comments we've made for other measures that address feral chickens and that issue, stating that we feel this is a county issue and better addressed by the counties. Mahalo.
Thank you. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You've heard us address the legislature about the feral chicken problem crisis that we're in, so we're in strong support of this. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We did get some individual testimonies of support. Seeing that there are no others to testify in person, would anyone else like to testify? Please come up, sir, and share your name before presenting testimony.
Mahalo, Chair, Co-Chair. Can you hear me? My name is Randy Franklin. I live in Kalihi. My question with the feral chicken policy, because I brought this up to my board many times, is what is the policy and what is the purpose of it is the first thing. The second thing I want to know is this committee going to work with the Honolulu City Council? Because under animal nuisance law, there is great big giant holes in an enforcement of animal nuisance. So feral chickens will be blamed for that. And I mean by on the enforcement part of it, that the police department, the law requires the police department to show up at the residence, but it requires the police department to do absolutely nothing. It states in the law that the police can show up, advise the person, and then drive away. At no time does the law state that there will be a cite. No time does the law state that there is any follow-up to this policy at all. So I brought this up with the City Council many times that if they would close the loopholes in the animal nuisance law, would generate tons of calls for the police for service. By enacting an enforcement clause in the policy, it would stop, the feral chickens would stop being blamed for this problem on most incidents, and then we can address it. My third question is, if feral chickens are a big problem, why haven't we adopted the resolution that Florida has adopted with their pythons? Florida saw that their pythons was getting out of control because the city could not manage their pythons. So the Florida legislature enacted a law to enforce their citizens to help them to eradicate pythons. So I don't understand if it's a problem why we want to enact that law, because the current laws I've read on feral chicken is basically don't feed them and maybe they won't populate. So if someone can answer that question for me, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Questions from committee members? Chair Gates.
DOA. DOA, somebody.
There's so many.
All right. There it is.
Director Hurd.
Okay, Director Hurd. Thank you.
Hi, guys.
Thank you for being here.
Good morning, committee members. Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. Go ahead.
Thank you. If you don't mind taking a crack at the previous testimony that was brought up regarding feral chickens and kind of the
Sure.
process.
Based on an email thread with Greg and the public, there's many different controls for feral chickens, but they're all complicated. Like if you use, what's what I want? Contraceptive. If you use a contraceptive, it's only valid for the time that it's in use, so then you reduce the population, but when you pull it out, you have to monitor the chickens eating it so nothing else eats it. It's a complicated issue, but I forgot the gentleman, oh yeah, sir, who brought up the pythons, I think that's a really big difference between getting rid of a cold-blooded animal versus a warm-blooded animal. It's like very different. Like, go get the snakes. Yeah, I'm there. Very few people would oppose that. But if you say, let's go kill the chickens, it's like, oh my God, it's a warm-blooded animal. It's hard. So the comment I would make is that I agree with Chelsea that it is a county issue, but you can't say that because it affects all of us. And so some of the pilot projects that have been put in place, the best one that has come up is the one where you rent a chicken cage, because if you rent it, you're responsible and it won't get stolen. If you put chicken cages all around the city, they get stolen, they get damaged. The people that believe in the chickens will save the chickens when they go into the thing. So it's complicated, but if you rent it to the homeowner, and the homeowner calls the hotline and says, I got a chicken, they come and they take it, that seems to work. It seems to be humane and it seems to work. So the solution should be all of us. It certainly should be at the county level, but at the state level. Greg, you have anything to say?
Again, Greg Takashima, Pesticides Program Manager. In general, we've discussed and we've had the working group of feral chickens to discuss feral chickens with the City and County of Honolulu. We've included a couple of other counties as well. The Department of Land and Natural Resources, I believe, were also in the discussion, and the Humane Society were in the discussion, I believe. As Chair Hurd said, there are multiple ways to take care of some of the concerns, at least from the pesticides approach. It is, as all pesticides are, they are relatively costly. As Chair said, it is not a permanent solution, right? And some of the problems with chickens is that they forage. They're a lot different in terms of the product oval control is actually designed to be used on pigeons, right? And pigeons come to specific areas, and you see pigeons all on the lines where people feed them. And the product is designed to initially you feed them, you get them trained to come to your area, and then you start feeding the oval control. And that's what reduces the populations in that area. So, oval control is an option. It's been discussed during the working group. There's also I believe it's the Bermuda feral chicken plan that discusses euthanization. There's a specific product that euthanizes the chickens. There's also been the idea of bounty programs for chickens as well. Our only concern then is people just start raising chickens for bounties, right? So, there's pros and cons to a lot of these discussions, and, we are in constant contact and discussion with a lot of the other agencies.
Thank you. Dylan, do you have anything to add? Good? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Good. Go ahead.
Sure. And for,
DOA?
I think DOA again. Oh, yeah. And so you mentioned that you did, the working group or whatever has worked with other counties. Was County of Maui involved?
I do believe they were invited. I remember seeing several of the counties. I believe the County of Maui's Department of Agriculture was on the discussion, at least initially.
So that was recent then?
The working group met 2 or 3 times. The first time was in late 2023, and then we had another one, I believe, sometime in January or February of 24.
Oh, okay, because it's such a new department at the county level.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that oval control, is that open to just the general public to get?
So the product is a general use pesticide, right? We have 2 different types of pesticides. They're restricted use or general use. It is a general use product that the public may be able to purchase. The requirements for oval control is that you must notify the Department of Land and Natural Resources and the Division of Forestry and Wildlife prior to any application. You must also notify the Department of Agriculture to ensure that we have the ability to enforce, make sure that you're using the product correctly, because there's such concern that non-target animals may pick it up, because it's not just affecting pigeons that it's supposed to, right? It can affect other bird and wildlife, especially endangered species. That's the main driver of that.
Okay, I'm just, as the recovery of Lahaina is occurring, and I'm in there caretaking our graveyard at our church and what have you. So we are feeding chickens. One we named Makapo, he burned his eye in the fire. And so, and they help. They kill centipedes. They eat bad things for us. So we kind of work in conjunction and do appreciate them being there. But I'm just looking at Lahaina because majority of them are gone due to the fire, to use it as a pilot in essence of apply this over control or do whatever. I mean, they've really condensed down in population, but we don't want to see it grow back to what it was, right? So how can, we as a sort of, we wipe the slate clean for the chicken population, now contain it and keep it at the level that it's at, that I see is very manageable. So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure.
comment?
So that's actually a pretty good place to be in. Well, pros and cons, right? The ability to use oval control. Now, this product is specific to pigeons, like I said. It doesn't have feral chickens on its label to use. And if you did apply it to control feral chickens, that would be a violation of some of our state and federal laws. We do have a process, however, to go through a special local needs registration through the pesticides branch as well as through EPA to get an amendment and an allowance to use it on non-target species such as chickens. We actually are currently in communications with a resident in Waianae, I believe, who's interested in using the product. They have communicated with the manufacturer because the manufacturer is required to, basically give their graces to use this product on pests that aren't on the label. So there are communications and works with the manufacturer to try and get that label. That label does require evidence, right? We need to make sure that it works. The product works, it's safe. We need to ensure that the application is done correctly as well. The same requirements apply whether you're applying it to pigeons or to chickens. So there is a process for us to use that product potentially in Lahaina as well. So we'd be willing to entertain, discussions as well.
Thank you very much. And then what about like a spay-neuter release thing? I mean, that's. Can that happen with the chicken?
I'm not too sure on the contraceptive part of chickens, other than products.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah.
For your efforts.
Thank you, Representative Cochran. One more quick question.
No problem.
You discussed the working group
Yes.
that has previously convened. Can you just briefly say, is this working group still meeting, and who are a part of this, re-emphasize who are a part of this working group?
Sure. The working group has not convened during the legislative session thus far, other than, I believe, in February. The main drivers of the working group are the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Health, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the City and County of Honolulu. All of the counties were invited to attend. So City and County of Honolulu, County of Maui, County of Hawaii, as well as County of Kauai. The Humane Society, I believe, was contacted. Chair Hurd, I don't remember if I'm missing anyone specific. Okay, so there was a bill introduced by Senator Mercado Kim related to furthering the working group and doing a study, an official study on the working group's recommendations and finding out kind of how the Bermuda plan, basically taking the Bermuda plan and moving it over and making it a Hawaii-specific plan.
Thank you. And is this working group specific to feral chicken management, or does it broaden in any other pests or?
This specific working group is solely focused on feral chickens.
Not to put you on the spot, but if there is already a working group convened, an interagency and state and county, do we need this resolution to move forward?
As long as we can continue the discussions that we've had thus far, and they've been relatively fruitful in providing all of the agencies good information, I think it would be duplicating work that's already been done.
One more quick question, my apologies. Do we believe this working group will reconvene after the legislative session closes?
I believe so. We have enough interest, and it's been brought, the feral chicken issue has been brought up over several sessions at this point, so I think it's an important discussion to continue to have.
I think Director Hurd has a
I
comment.
just want to put a ribbon on it, Greg. I think one of the results of the working group that's so valuable is we all learn from each other. We did not know, for instance, that the city and county had all these flyers and these informational pieces that we can all share. I learned that, like any contraception, or I shouldn't make such a generalization, but when you stop using over-control, it stops working. So it's not a matter of eradicating all the chickens. If you think you've quelled them enough, then you stop application, and then the population is allowed to repopulate. So I think I agree with that two working groups would be conflicting. They would probably come up with different conclusions, different recommendations. So continuing down the path we've gone has been really, really quite good. We've learned a lot, and shout out to pesticides, huh? Pretty good work for all the guys.
Thank you very much. No further questions. Any other questions, committee members? My apologies, we cannot entertain comments. Do you have, from just testimony only? We'll check in with you offline after the hearing. We're going to move on to our final set of resolutions, HCR 171 and HR 150. It's requesting the state and county agencies to notify animal welfare organizations of deceased cats and dogs that are picked up along state and county roadways. First to testify is Hawaii Humane Society on Zoom.
Hi, Chair Gates, Vice Chair Kahaloa, and committee member Steph Kendrick with the Hawaiian Humane Society. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm sorry. We're out at an outreach event today at the Kauhali on Meadow Street, providing assistance to houseless pet owners and the pet owners who are housed at the Kauhali. So it's a little noisy out here, but I didn't want to miss the chance to weigh in on this measure. One of the services that we provide for our houseless and sheltered pet owners is microchipping and callers with ID tags and their cell phone numbers so that they can get their pets back home if they get lost. But we also need to provide closure for folks if their pets get out and don't make it home. We know that a lot of animals are killed on our roadways every year. So this measure would allow the Hawaiian Humane Society, the County Animal Control on Hawaii Island, and the nonprofits that provide animal services on Maui, Kauai, and Molokai to give that closure to pet owners. And we ask the committee for your support for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have nearly 40 pieces of written testimony in support from individuals and organizations, but no one else to testify in person. Would anyone else wish to testify on this measure? Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, we're going to break for a short recess before decision making. Welcome back. We're now here, Committee on Agriculture and Food Systems, the 10:15 agenda to complete decision-making. First measure on the agenda is SB 2362 SD1 related to ornamental ginger. We are going to pass this out as a HD1. We're going to defect the date to July 1st, 3000. And per the recommendation of Hawaii Farm Bureau, we're going to note in the standing committee report the 125,000 appropriation, so that sits in the report there. Any questions, comments, concerns from committee members? Seeing none, chair for the vote.
Okay, members voting on SB 2362 SD1. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Rep. Cochran?
Aye.
Rep. Lowen? Aye. Rep. Peruso? Aye. Rep. Woodson? Aye. Rep. Ward, excuse. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 3026 relating to pesticides. We will pass this out as an HD1 and defect the date to July 1st, 3000. Questions, comments, concerns from committee members? Seeing none?
Oh, sorry, wait, hang on, sorry. Is this
Representative Cochran?
the bill that I think HFUU wanted to be added on? I think this one was a request from Hunter? Is there? Or
Yes,
do we feel? Sorry?
We can note that in the committee report. It actually doesn't specify representatives specifically as organizations, but specifies sector. So, but we will notate that just for the committee report. It's not individual organizations. Oh,
Oh, like Farm Bureau? Well, okay. Or are we feeling there's enough of a diversity in individual that incorporate people of farmers union or something? I'm not sure. Just agree with the comments of HFUU.
okay, we will make that correction, and we will just notate that in the committee report. Thank you, Representative Cochran. Any other questions, comments, concerns? See none, chair for the vote. HD1.
Okay. All right, members voting on SB 3026. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, noting all members present and the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no? Anyone voting reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 162, HR 141. We are going to make this an HD1. We're going to make some amendments to add, based on Representative Cochran's notation, to add the County of Maui, and we're also going to add the County of Hawaii, just so they're not left out, because we know this is an issue.
Sure. So this measure is based on a bill that was introduced this session that builds on previous legislation that was passed in 2019. So there's already a report from this pilot being enacted on Hawaii Island, and the success of that endeavor was the basis for this further forward movement. And that measure also already included Maui. The reason Maui is not included in the report is that Maui never submitted an application to participate. So we can include Maui, but Hawaii Island has already, they are the basis for this work.
Is noted that comment. Would we still wanted to include Maui if they have not been included before, if that is okay with committee? Perfect. So we're correcting that amendment. We are doing an amendment to the resolution to only add the County of Maui, since the County of Hawaii already has piloted and participated in this program. And that is the only amendments. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Chair for the vote.
All right. Members voting on HCR 162 and HR 141. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, noting all members present in the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no? Anyone voting reservation? Any abstentions? Seeing none, chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving to the next measure, HCR 23, HR 13. We're going to move this as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, chair for the vote. Yes. Just to be sure, this is HCR 23, HR 13. We're going to move this as is.
Okay.
We're just going to give a moment.
Okay. Members voting on HCR 23, HR 13. Chair's recommendation is to move as is, noting all members present in the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no? Anyone voting abstention? Reservation? Seeing none. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. We're now moving to HCR 24, HR 14. We are going to also move this as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, we're going to move to vote. Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay. Members voting on HCR 24, HR 14. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as is, noting all members present and the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Any no votes, reservations, or abstentions? Seeing none, chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HCR 43, HR 32. This is the strategic plan to strengthen food security for low-income communities in Hawaii. We're going to move this as is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, Chair.
Sorry.
Oh,
Chair, sorry. I mean, I think in my comments during discussion was I understand the focus on low income, but I think there's extremely a dire need in our West Maui area, and God forbid such a massive occurrence happen elsewhere in our state, and they be put into that predicament that we are facing currently. So yeah, I just, I support it, but maybe, I don't know, sometime it can be extended to not just low-income demographic, but, I don't know, disaster surviving demographic or something? I don't know.
we will make an amendment to add disasters and recovery to the resolution, noting the fact that this goes on to finance and they don't usually make amendments, so I don't want to put it in the StanCom report and miss it out. So, but we usually don't make amendments to those resolutions, so we are going to do not as is. We're going to make an amendment to add recovery.
Okay. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you so much for that.
Perfect. So that will be an HD1. Again, that is HCR 43, HR 32. Any other questions, comments, concerns? We're going to move to the vote.
Okay. Members voting on HCR 43, HR 32. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, noting all members present in the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no? Anyone voting reservations? Any abstentions? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Voting on, moving to HCR 161, HR 140. That is to convene a working group to review the effectiveness of the relevant state laws governing agricultural-based commercial operations. We're going to move that as is. Question, comments, concerns from committee? Seeing none, chair for the vote.
Okay, members voting on HCR 161, HR 140. Chair's recommendation is to move this as is, noting all members present in the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no, reservations or abstentions? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, Chair. Moving to HCR 189, HR 169. This is the prohibiting the introduction of biocontrol agents that might threaten economically important forage grass species. Based on comments from DLNR, I would like to accept the amendments for language to insert to amend this resolution to make it palatable for the department and for the cattlemen and ranchers across the state of Hawaii. Any questions, comments, concerns?
What kind of language?
We are going to mimic some of the language from their resolution that they are going to share with us. Do you need more specificity? We just want there to be, I guess, some balance in protecting ranching, but also allowing some forms of biocontrol. So,
I appreciate that.
thank you.
Yeah.
So that is public, their resolution from HIS. So that is there for, so we're just gonna take a portion of that and use that language that's been already approved by HIS. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Sure. I was, can't figure out if this, whose testimony it may have come from, but to insert native grasses.
We will notate that in the report.
Oh, I can't remember where I saw that.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Okay, seeing none, we are going to move this as the HC1. Chair for the vote.
Okay, members voting on HCR 189, HR 169. Chair's recommendation is to move this out as an HD1, noting all members present in the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no, reservations or abstention? Seeing none, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving to HCR 47, HR 36. This is the feral chicken population working group. We're going to defer this measure because there is the interagency working groups currently moving forward. And if that doesn't follow through, then we will look at future resolutions. We're going to move on to our last resolution set, HCR 171, HR 150, requesting the state and county agencies to notify animal welfare organizations if dogs or cats are deceased on state and county roadways. We're going to move that as is. Questions, comments, concerns from committee? Seeing none, chair for the vote.
Okay, members voting on HCR 171, HR 150. Chair's recommendation is pass this out as is, noting all members present in the excused absence of Rep. Ward. Anyone voting no, reservations or abstentions? Seeing none, chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, chair. Thank you, committee. We are adjourned.